Welcome to the FAM Podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys and stories of creators here in New York City. I'm really stoked today to welcome an old friend, Nick Kohler, otherwise known as N2N. Over the last 10 years, N2N has become broadly recognized for his blistering marathon sets, fueled by infectiously joyful house music. In 2018, he was mentioned by Billboard in its list of the 9 best sets from Burning Man, as his yearly Sunrise performance has garnered a cult-like following. A lifelong student of music, his sets seamlessly blend genres and have become crowd favorites across the country. In the studio, his versatility shines through, as his quirky feel-good style has landed him major label signings as well as support from the world's biggest DJs, including Fatboy Slim, Chris Lake, David Guetta, and Idris Elba. 2023 saw N2N root himself firmly in the scene with a slew of releases on Glasgow Underground, Deadmau5's House Imprint, House Trap, and Insomniac, while his debuts on the effervescent Nervous Records, Techne, and South of Saturn await in 2024. He has cemented himself as one of the genre's brightest rising stars. Please welcome Nick Kohler, aka N2N. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for that wonderful intro that I wrote about myself.
We've known each other for almost a decade, which is crazy. It's awesome to see the trajectory of your career from playing house parties where we lived together in San Francisco 8 years ago, all the way to crazy venues and touring. I want to take a step back before we get into the music stuff. Music has been a big part of your life, but I'm curious, from your upbringing, where did you really develop this passion, this love for music?
I was born in Nashville, in Tennessee, and I think it was pretty commonplace for people in Nashville, whether they wanted to be musicians or not, to pick up instruments at a pretty young age. So I started playing guitar and piano when I was young. I started getting guitar lessons when I was 12, and I taught myself piano in high school. And it's something that immediately resonated with me as more than just a hobby. Without going too deep into my childhood, didn't necessarily have the most freedom to express myself and my feelings, especially negative feelings. When I was growing up, I found that outlet particularly healing through music. I would sit in my room and play guitar and sing to myself, and I was like, wow, this for some reason makes me feel better than I did. And I have all of these emotions that I didn't know what to do with. I didn't know how to process. And I still, I didn't know how to process for many years after that. But I made the connection that music made me feel some type of way. And I wanted to continue that feeling above and beyond the general hobby of just playing an instrument. I wanted it to be something that I did with my life. And I figured that out before I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because we know you as a DJ,
Mhm.
but you started actually not by DJing, but by playing instruments.
Yeah.
When did you develop DJing? Was that in high school? Were you primarily playing instruments in high school? Were you in bands?
It's funny, going back a little bit actually, my dad and my stepmom introduced me to electronic music when I was like very young. I was 7 years old when I got my first records. They're from my dad. It was Play by Moby and You've Come a Long Way Baby by Fatboy Slim, both of which were released in 1998 or 1999. I would jump on the trampoline in my backyard and I have the French doors open because I couldn't bring the music outside in the 90s
Yeah.
because I didn't have a boombox. And so I would put the music on the stereo and I'd jump on the trampoline. I was like, wow, this is dope. So fast forward about 10 years, and throughout high school, nobody wanted me to be in their bands because I was not a popular kid. So much so that I played all of my music alone. A couple of my friends were in bands, and I just never. When I went to my first festival in 2010, it was Bonnaroo, and I saw Pretty Lights there. I had just taken ecstasy for the first time, and I was flying high. I saw this guy making this whole crowd of people move by himself. I was like, fuck, I don't need other people to pursue this with my life. I can do it completely alone because the singer-songwriter path was never going to happen for me. I don't have a good enough voice. I'm not talented in that way as a songwriter. And as much as I love to do it, it's never something that was really going to happen for me. So I saw Pretty Lights DJing. I was like, that is what I want to do. I love electronic music. I've never tried to make it, but this guy can do it by himself. I don't need to be in a band or have friends to do it. So when I moved to New York, when I was 17, right before my freshman year of college, I was convinced to teach myself how to produce and DJ. And I went to school for music. I did classical theory for 4 years, jazz theory and electives in music technology. For the most part, I was completely self-taught in production, which is why it took me so long to get decently good at it. Then I went to the Guitar Center at Union Square on 14th Street, and I would practice until they kicked me out every day.
That's so funny.
And use the old ass CDJs they had
Yeah.
there. So that's how I got into it. I got really lucky, and I think that so much of anyone's success in their career is luck plus work. The harder you work, the luckier you get because you put yourself in more situations to get lucky. One of my girlfriends, my freshman year, was dating this guy who was a club promoter in New York, and he pulled some strings and helped get me my first gigs when I was 18, a freshman in college. So I started playing the meatpacking district parties super young. Wasn't really any good, but it was trial by fire, especially if you're doing open format stuff. You learn how to read a crowd, and if you don't keep people buying bottles or drinks, you don't have a job. And so that kind of launched, I guess, my career as a DJ.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Luck being preparation meeting opportunity, right?
Yeah, 100%.
That's so cool to hear. And I think one of the things that was super clear early on for you is that this was more than just a hobby. This was really a passion.
Mm.
And you have somehow turned this passion into your your life, your lifestyle. What's it like turning your passion into the thing that you do, like living this passion forward life, if you will?
I think it is the single most rewarding and the single most terrifying and at times emotionally debilitating thing that you can
Hmm.
do with your life, because it's peaks and valleys, emotional peaks and valleys. When it works and clicks for you, it's the best feeling ever. You're flying high. And when it doesn't feel like it's working, you feel worthless. You feel like you feel directionless in life sometimes. Like I've had experiences where if I'm not playing shows for a couple months or having a hard time signing music, which right now I haven't signed a song since March, and I'm not feeling great about myself. That seeps into your self-worth, how you're doing with this passion that you've chosen as your life equates you subconsciously to how you feel about yourself as a human being. And that can be really crippling at times, especially if things aren't going well. When you equate it to your self-worth like that, it can easily lead to depression and anxiety in a lot of different ways. And that's just a sacrifice that you have to make. If someone has figured out how to defeat that, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've dealt with the same thing. You're a creative person and you've chosen the road less traveled yourself too. And it's not necessarily the easiest one, and it is super rewarding, but there's have to have been many times where you're like, fuck, what am I doing with my life? Like my mom wanted me to go into business. I minored in Mandarin in college, and she's like, you should go into business and work in China and do all this stuff. And I was like,
I'll go DJ in China
yeah,
instead.
I could do that. There are times now when I look back and I'm like, should I have gone into business and done something safe and been financially secure and know what I'm doing and have my weekends off and not have to think after 6 o'clock, did I make the wrong choice? No, probably not, because that would be boring for me. It's great for a lot of other people, but it would be boring for me. I would always wonder what would have happened if I had chosen what I wanted to do. And so it's worth, even in a period where I'm not feeling great about myself, I'd still do it over again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like managing the peaks and the valleys, and it's so hard to detach yourself from the outcome and really just focus on the inputs and the process, right? So much of the journey of an artist is really just focusing on your craft and doing it for the joy. But at the same time, when you're living this passion forward life, your livelihood depends on it, and there's a lot of pressure to that.
When money gets introduced to anything, it complicates things.
Yeah.
Whether you're working with a friend, a spouse, or doing something you love, and putting food on the table or paying rent relies on that. It is automatically going to change how you do things. Instead, for example, the way that I approach music, and I hate that I do this. I'm working on changing, and I've been telling people that I've been working on changing for years. The way that I approach music fundamentally has changed from let's sit down and have fun with this to let's sit down and do something productive to further my career, put more music out or get more shows and eventually raise the bottom line. And I hate that. I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah, you want to do it for the
I
love.
want to do it for the love, and I still love it. Do it for the love, because if I didn't love it, I would choose a different life,
Yeah.
right? I would choose a different path. But at the core of sitting down and trying to make art for art's sake, that's something that has started to escape me more and more, the deeper into this career that I get. And I'd love to figure out how to get back to just doing it for fun. One of the ways that I've done that, we just jammed, that's a huge way that I'm really starting to try to get back into that. This is really fun. Let's not care about the outcome. I'm doing it with friends. Making
Yeah.
music with friends, I think, has been.
And playing music for friends. You just played our Halloween party. You have been touring all these venues, and now you're playing a house party for Halloween. Our Halloween party was a 450-person house party.
Massive house party.
That,
Twice as
that's a
big.
great example of doing it for the love.
I don't think I have to even do it for the love to have had a great time here. It's like the best party I've been to in quite some time. Halloween especially can be a little tricky, because I tell people like Halloween is like New Year's, because everyone goes out on Halloween.
Especially in New York.
There's always this kind of like anxious anticipation about, oh, where am I going tonight? Or it's got to be the best night ever. It's got to be the best night of the year. It's got to be this. And sometimes that seeps its way into the energy of the crowds that you're playing for. People are just like stiff and nervous and anxious. And fortunately, I've played a couple of shows in the last few years that weren't that way. But a lot of Halloween parties, I'd say more than half that I've played, have been a little bit disappointing in terms of this general anxiety at everyone there. And this party here was the opposite of that. It was just so loose and free flowing, and people were getting down. It was a billion degrees in this room. And people were just losing their minds, open to whatever music was hitting their ears.
Yeah.
The coolest part about it is Halloween is the biggest social media weekend of the year, and nobody had their phones out. I noticed it when I was playing, and looking back at some of the footage you took too, I saw there's, wow, this is such a locked in, like people are just enjoying themselves in this moment.
Yeah.
So I'd do it again in a heartbeat, and have me back next year.
Dude, hell yeah. That's beautiful, man. It's an interesting tie into this idea of when you remove your expectations and attachment to outcomes, you can really sink into the moment, whether as an attendee at the Halloween party or as an artist enjoying your process in creating. So thank you so much for DJing our party and for being part of this. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
you. Cheers.